Hello and welcome. My name's Sam McNeil and I'm making a recording of a chapel service that I made in May 2016 to remember Barry Martin, an old collegian. So this quote, "One death is a tragedy, a million deaths is just a statistic," is attributed to Joseph Stalin, and I like to start with this because it enables us to put the context of Barry Martin's life into the correct framework. And it's easy to look at massive conflict like World War II, and typically we talk in terms of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions when it comes to the casualties. But for each of those people killed, there was a unique story, and that is what I hope to portray with this presentation. Because the reality is numbers are all around us, and without the correct context they are largely meaningless. So the numbers that you can see here all in fact relate to Barry Martin, but initially have no meaning to you. But hopefully through this presentation you will be able to make some sense of these in the end. This is where it all started for Barry Martin, born in Waio, North Canterbury, where his father Francis Martin farmed. Here's a picture of him in his military uniform, and sadly Francis didn't get to know him too well because he was killed in Gallipoli just a few months after Barry was born. His mother, widowed, relocated to Canterbury, where she remarried and went on to have 4 more children, with Barry being sent to St Andrew's College, which we can see here. Looked very different back in those days. Here's a picture of Strowan House with the entire school out the front in 1918. And another picture looking at the dining hall side, before we see a picture of what it looked like in one of Barry Martin's classes. Again, quite different, all boys. And the year Barry arrived, the Collegian, or the Thistledown as it was known then, recorded him arriving, and they had a lot of snow there, snow fights and new boys. Not a lot remains of Barry's academic records, but we see here 3rd in arithmetic and 3rd in drawing. He actually left and went to Christ College for his secondary school, and after the war, after school, he was working as a diesel mechanic up in Blenheim when the World War II broke out, and he volunteered there. His motivation, well, we know that. Here's his application. Why did he consider joining the Air Force? National Defence, father killed in Gallipoli, and adventure. So the memory of his father was definitely a motivating factor. He was sent to Levin, where all New Zealand pilots and aircrew were trained, and after a few months there, the long and arduous journey across the Atlantic to Canada, where he continued his training at Ontario, Manitoba, and the beautiful Nova Scotia. To complete his training, it was across the Atlantic, and to Bournemouth initially in the south, and then all the way up to the top of Scotland, Lossiemouth, where he honed his navigation skills before finally being posted to his first operational base at Mildenhall. Quite a famous base where a lot of New Zealanders were, and you can actually see the airfield still here. And here's a picture of Barry and some of the crew that he flew with. Some of his first operational flights over Germany were to Cologne. So you can see here the yellow pins indicate targets that Barry flew to, most of these numerous times across his missions. And as we zoom out here, we can see all across Germany, north, south, and even into places in France, Paris, and some of the coastal towns as well. Barry's final mission of his first tour was mine laying off the Frisian Islands. And you can see here, this was his 32nd mission. And at this stage, he could have retired and become an instructor. But instead, he immediately volunteered to continue flying again and was reposted to the Pathfinders at Oakington. Now, these were the elite who marked the targets, and they went on particularly dangerous missions down to places in northern Italy like Genoa and Turin. Long, dangerous missions. And as the war progressed, he even went as far east into Poland, as you can see here in Stettin. So unfortunately, on the 16th mission of his second tour, luck ran out for Barry, and on the way to Cologne to bomb, he was attacked by a night fighter and his plane was shot down in the Netherlands, and you can see here. This is the exact location of where his plane actually came down. The tail snapped off and landed at the crossroads here. And the main part of the plane with the body of 4 crew landed here, including that of Barry Martin. This was his crew with Barry indicated there, and I know all of this because of the Dutch police report which I was able to locate. And this Dutch policeman, who was the first person on the scene here, recounted all of these facts. And in fact, it wasn't until the following day that the 5th body was located down here, with the rear gunner and the mid-upper gunner managing to successfully parachute out of the plane before it crashed. The Germans relocated the bodies of the soldiers, of the airmen, to the Rotterdam General Cemetery, and this is in fact where Barry's final resting place is here. And we can see his tombstone: B. Martin DFC, Navigator, Royal New Zealand Air Force, 2nd of February 1943. And this is the man that was responsible for shooting down the bomber that Barry Martin was navigating on that night. His name is Hans-Dieter Frank, and was a German night fighter ace who finished with 55 kills to his credit, before he too was tragically killed at a young age of 24, in fact during a mid-air collision with another German plane. Undoubtedly, Hans-Dieter was an extremely skilled pilot, and also the recipient of Germany's highest medals for battlefield bravery, the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross and Oak Leaves, and he was out there doing his job on that night. Here's Barry Martin's service medals, and note the one on the left, the Distinguished Flying Cross, and that is one of the higher honours that the Air Force, Royal Air Force, was able to give to its members. Tragically, Barry Martin never knew that he actually received it, because he was only awarded this 2 days after he went missing, and he was unable to know that this was waiting for him. His medals were actually auctioned at Bonham's auction house in 2014 as a sale there, so at some point they've been lost to his family. But what I want to do is put into context the sort of bravery that Barry and all members of his crew and all of those flying at this time had to display. And I thought I'd do this by recounting the story of Doug Smith, also a New Zealander, a pilot, and also a recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross. And as a 97-year-old, he was interviewed about the very final mission of his first tour, and he had a very near miss with another Lancaster bomber coming in over the top. So Barry obviously completed his first mission and volunteered for a second. I believe Doug Smith, after completing his one, became a training pilot. Let's hear his story.
Anyway, over the RT having the permission to bomb the Red Spotfire, and we could see the Red Spotfire there. Well, of course, you know what happened. Everybody comes whoop like that. And I'm standing there. I was flying on the bombing run, you know, left, right, steady from the bomb hammer. And I'm not even looking out the front, but the engineer's looking out the front, and the navigator's looking out the front. Because he was in the Astrodome, you see. And all of a sudden the engineer says, "Dive, Doug, dive!" And I don't know the toss, I go whoop like that. And this length came over the top like that. And the wingtip caught our trailing aerial. Our aerial that ran from the fin to the egg, it just took that with it. He was that close. And the navigator must have seen that wing about that far away from him come over there. You know, because you could see like that at night. And the navigator lost his nerve. Now, it was his last trip. That was our last trip, the three of us. And he lost his nerve. And I said to him, "Come on, mate, come on." He didn't answer me. I said to the wireless operator, "Go back and see if you talk some sense into him. He must finish the log and tell us where we're going." But he didn't. He wouldn't do anything. He just sat in his chair and he's got a glazed look on his face, and he's just gone. He just had enough. So, well, we couldn't do anything for him. The wireless operator got us home on bearings, you see, and we didn't have much trouble really, except that we trailed all over the defended areas that we should have been able to miss, you see. But anyway, of course, when he got on the ground, I had to say that he didn't help us on the way home. So he was judged LMF, lack of moral fibre. Now that's a shocking thing. He'd done 29 trips, but I couldn't do anything for him. I don't know what happened to Mac. He was a nice guy too.
Barry's death was recognised by St Andrews College, and here in the September edition of the 1943 Collegian, it notes down Barry's both his death and his awarding of the Distinguished Flying Cross for great skill and efficiency as a heavy bomber navigator, and a high ability and courage being largely responsible for the many successes of his crew against heavily defended and distant targets. At all times he has displayed much keenness and great determination. His name was also amongst other old collegians listed in Pro Patria. To put the life of Barry into a slightly different perspective, I did some research and found an interesting book called Under a Bomber's Moon by Stephen Harris, and he was researching his great uncle Colwyn Jones, who was best friends with Barry, and in fact they went out on a number of hijinks during their downtime, and here's something from the book which I think is really interesting. The other night, another New Zealander on the station, one Barry Martin of Christchurch, turned on a rare treat, fried oysters. He scrounged some flour from the mess, made a batter from it and some other ingredients best not mentioned or known, and fried the oysters in a batter in some rancid butter. Despite the sound, they tasted grand. They reminded me somewhat painfully of the days at home when we used to go into a grill room and have lovely steak and fried oysters and stacks of bread and butter. Last night we had a marvellous supper. Barry Martin had been sent a lot of tinned stuff from home, and among the tins was one of tomato sauce and another of lamb's tongues. In our room we have managed to secure a radiator and an electric hot water jug, both of them against regulations, but very handy just the same. About 9 o'clock, after we'd been yarning for some 2 hours, the Crow went round for supper. Barry Martin is something of a cook. In fact, we told him he would make a good wife some day. He heated the tomato sauce, or some of it, and into the sauce he put the tongues. Then he thickened the mixture with some flour which he had scrounged and let it heat. Then we shared it and ate it out of cups. I have not tasted anything so delicious for a long time. Then, when that was finished, we put on the hot water jug, and while that was heating, we made toast. Colwyn recorded a lot of stories about Barry Martin, and he was devastated to learn that he was missing. He actually rang Oakington, the airbase, where Barry was located, to invite him to come to the presentation for his own Distinguished Flying Cross, only to learn that Barry was missing, presumed killed in action. He then sent a couple of letters to Barry Martin's mother, Guinevere, back in New Zealand, who urged him not to get back into operational combat missions because, like Barry, Colwyn had actually finished his first tour and was a training, but had opted to become a training navigator. However, it seems he felt a strong sense of loyalty and camaraderie to his fellow crew and volunteered for a second mission and was killed on the first flight with a new tour of duty. So to wrap up, I guess what I've tried to do today is put the context of Barry Martin as an individual into the wider grand context of World War II. So as one death, he was actually one of 8 old collegians that was killed flying for the Royal Air Force during World War II. Overall, there were 84 Kiwis killed in the Air Force alone in the month of February 1943 when Barry Martin was killed, which was a subset of 4,256 Kiwis killed in the Air Force, but that's dwarfed by the total number of deaths in Bomber Command throughout World War II, coming in at over 47,000, and when the fighter squadrons are included as well, 70,253 men were killed during World War II in the air. This is a photo of a statue at the Auckland War Memorial Museum, made by Weta Workshops, I believe, and it's just one of the crew standing outside their bomber, having come back from a mission, and all of them exhibiting a lot of stress on their faces. And when you look at the statistics on the left-hand side, you can see that Barry Martin as a 31-year-old, did pretty well to survive as long as he did, and to actually volunteer for a second tour and do a number of missions there, but very, very few survived for 2 tours. So I started out saying that numbers are all around us, and these are the ones that I put up, and here's the context. Number 101, that's Barry Martin's stud number, so he was the 101st student to St Andrew's College. Number 3, the members of his family that were killed in either World War I or II. His younger stepbrother was killed on his final flight, training flight in Kaikoura, when his training plane crashed into the mountains there. Number 5, the number of crew who were killed from the plane of Barry that night. 4,256, the number of New Zealanders killed in the Air Force in World War II. 403,790, that's Barry Martin's service number. Number 46 is the number of flights that Barry Martin successfully completed. And number 8 is the number of old collegians from St Andrew's College that were killed during World War II in the Air Force. So there we go. Today we remember Barry Martin.